everybody. Welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So, we're going to do the deep dive into Blade Runner 2049 now. I've got lots of notes here in my notebook, which I'll be referring to. And I've only got two categories that I really want to go over. Actually, it's really just one big category. The cast is the second category. I'm going to start with cast, though. Ryan Gosling plays the lead in this film. He plays a character named Kay. I really appreciate that they called him Kay, which is from The Castle, of course, by Franz Kafka. And if you want to know more about The Castle, there's a video on it on our channel here. But the character Kay in The Castle, of course, is caught up in all kinds of bureaucracy. Kay in this story isn't caught up in bureaucracy, but is a victim of the society that he's in. There's a lot of prejudice against him. And I think that that might be what they were the parallel they were trying to make. I do think it's a very interesting, fun choice. I'm not positive if it lands as well as it could, because bureaucracy, I don't think is much of a problem in the world of Blade Runners, He does need to prove that the person that he retired was a replicant, right? That he has to get a picture of their eye with the number on it and even take their eye. I think he actually literally takes their right eye. So that's a little bit of bureaucracy, but that's about all we see, to be honest, bureaucracy-wise. So I don't think it lands quite as well as it could, but it's a cool choice. I like that. And it's funny because all of the documentaries that are on the 4K, of course, like I said in the previous video. So there's a previous video just talking about a general rating of the film, and it's definitely worth watching that in addition to this. I would recommend that you check that out. I watched the 4K, and there's documentaries on it, and in each of the documentaries, everybody is claiming that Ryan Gosling was their idea. And you see that a lot in these. People forget what happened and they want to take credit for the stuff that worked, you know what I mean? And the stuff that doesn't work, they try to make it like it's somebody else's idea or whatever, But it's funny in this because the writer's like, as I was writing this, all I could picture was Ryan Gosling. And then the directors are like, well, once we read it, we knew we had to get Ryan Gosling. And then they cut to Harrison Ford and he's like, well, when I read it, I was thinking we should get Ryan Gosling. And I brought it up and they're like, we already got him. So it's kind of funny that everybody, and I don't know, I wonder if he hangs out with Ridley Scott. I'm not sure why everyone was so on board for Ryan Gosling to be a part of this. He could have been part of the reason that it even happened, to be honest. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that. But everybody really wanted him, apparently. And I feel like he's okay. I don't... He didn't blow my mind in any way, you know what I mean? And he wasn't bad in any way. It's really crazy when somebody's just fine. He was just fine. Not the most memorable. I think they probably could have done better, Because, of course, and I believe that there was probably a debate about this, because they got some amazing actors to play replicants, like Rutger Hauer level actors. And I know that they would talk about it and think, but this is the lead, and those guys are bad guys, right? We can't have an actor that's like Daryl Hannah or Brian Jones because they're the bad guys. And if we're not careful, we're going to make Kay into a bad guy. And I feel like this film, I'm going to get into that in a little bit, about the direction this film takes and not being too precious with Kay, I think. I think they kind of hurt themselves by wanting to basically have a human lead, but making the script have them be a replicant. I think they should have cast people who were more like replicants as Kay. I honestly believe the two people that they got that were just amazing. One of them is named Sylvia Hoeks. She plays Love. Incredible. Like the strangeness of her is so important for that role. And her just intense energy at all times. It's incredible. What she does on camera is incredible. She would have made an amazing Kay. And it would have been completely different, of course, right? Obviously. But wow, I mean, I feel like the film would have done better in that case. Also, of course, Dave Batista. I'm sorry, I'm not saying these names great. I apologize. But he's awesome, right? And I think that he's really lucky, to be honest, because I know that he came. Well, I think the world. I know that he came from wrestling, of course, but I think the world really got to know him as an actor coming from Guardians of the Galaxy, right? And that character in Guardians of the Galaxy is so lovable. And I think it's kind of neat that people now associate him as an actor and his characters as being lovable. I think that's a really good thing for him because he easily could have just been typecast as Terminator 27. You know what I mean? But he's got this really lovable quality and people respect that about him, and I think that's really good for his career, especially in the future, because he's not always going to be able to be the really tough guy, you know what I mean? So he has an amazing quality for playing a replicant also because he's so likable and childlike, right? That it fits for him. He would have made an amazing Kay. I feel like if he played Kay, then the film probably would have done better. But there would have been some big changes that needed to be made, and I'm going to kind of go into that when we get a little bit later on through this. But those two actors, Sylvia Hoeks and Dave Bautista, excellent, excellent in this film. I think they really make this thing shine. They're probably the best parts of it. Of course, Harrison Ford's in it. I don't know that we needed that, to be 100% honest. It's not terrible, of course. You know, I really appreciate how much the director kept Blade Runner Blade Runner. You know what I mean? I love the music through this. I'll get to that in just a minute. But it's so much like the original. The art direction is so much like the original, although there were changes made, which I talk about in the other video, right? Um, but that dedication to the original film is incredible. I don't know if we needed to go as far as making it about Rachel and Harrison Ford, but it doesn't hurt it. You know what I mean? I don't think. The scenes are good, right? It's all right. I'm not sure if it was really necessary, but he's great. I love seeing Harrison Ford anytime, right? Of course, he's excellent. Super fun to watch. Um, so Joy, the actress is just fine. I think she's a lot like Ryan Reynolds in the sense that she's perfect for the role. She did just fine, right? There's no negatives. I can't really be like, and I will remember that forever, because she was just fine. Um, but the character, I feel like the character of Joy, and I'm going to go into this when we get down to the second half of this. The character of Joy, I don't think came out the way that it was originally intended to. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But the actress did a great job. Just fine. Just fine. Um, Edward James Olmos was in it, which is awesome, right? Always fun to see him too, just like Harrison Ford. Of course, I think his most successful thing more recently has been Battlestar Galactica, right? He's got a ton of films. He's excellent. Anything he's in, he's excellent. Battlestar Galactica is great, of course. And I'm talking about the new one, not the original Battlestar Galactica. But he's awesome. I really loved seeing him. Robin Wright was cool to see. I know she's had a very successful career. The What I know her from, being older, of course, is Princess Bride and Forrest Gump, right? And she's done a ton since then, television and film. Excellent. She did a great job. It was neat to see her as the captain of the police squad. It was very cool, and she handled it really well. The only kind of questionable moment that I had with her is when she starts hitting on Kay. I thought that was a tiny bit strange, right? It made me wonder because there's two ways that these things can go. You can either have someone who decides I want to make this character a female, so they write it as a female, or you can have someone who says I wrote this character, but I think we're going to cast a female, and then they don't change anything. I feel like it would have made a lot more sense if the captain were male and the detective was female. If the male captain started hitting on the female detective, that would have made a little more sense to me than the female hitting on the male. But it's not. There's nothing wrong with it. Of course, it just kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't quite sure because she was so angry. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. And of course, it's not written by a female. And that I think that's the real key to it. I feel like if a female wrote it, that little line wouldn't be in there. She wouldn't say, "What happens if I finish this?" Because she's trying to do her damn job. She's trying to save the world, right? That's what's on her mind at the time. But she does an excellent job. She's an amazing actress. Of course, it's directed by Villeneuve. I'm trying to take advice. Made a comment on the other one, trying to explain to me how to pronounce his name. I know I'm still not getting it right, but I think that's a little bit better. Villeneuve. I'm taking out the little middle part. So he directed it. Incredible, obviously. Ridley Scott did produce it, which is totally cool. Like I said, it's really neat that Villeneuve took the time and spent the money, I guess. And it could have been opposite. Ridley could have been pushing this thing the whole time. And he's the one that hired Villeneuve based on Arrival. You know what I mean? That's possible too. But they're all so powerful that it's hard to say, where these decisions came from. But I think it really worked. I'm glad that they were working together. That was very good. Roger Deakins. So he's the cinematographer. He's amazing. And you need that. Villeneuve needs that, and Blade Runner needs that, right? Incredible. The lighting is incredible. The colors are incredible. The lens choices, everything a cinematographer does is done incredibly well. He works a lot with the Coen brothers, right? He did Fargo, and he did Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and No Country for Old Men. He did the really big ones, and he also did Shawshank Redemption. He's just excellent. And it's, like I said, everyone's so powerful and there's so much money that it would be amazing to work in a situation like that where everyone's just at the top of their game, period. Everyone has the time and they have the money. And of course, there's a little bit of pressure, you want to get it done, but you're making bold choices. It would be incredible. It would truly be incredible to be in a situation like that. And of course, the music. So while I was watching this, I thought I was hearing literally music from the original film some of the time, and we were, of course. They took the song "Tears in Rain" from the original score, and they did put it in this film. So if you're watching it and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh my gosh, that really just sounds like the other movie," it really does, It was composed by Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch. Sorry for those names, but I I love it because I feel like they were able to take out the stuff that didn't age really well, like the saxophone, and replace it with this really aggressive, harsh stuff that I really enjoyed. I I I for me personally, I try to avoid sex and violence in films only because I feel like a lot of times they're put in only to make money. They do not enhance the plot. But when those things are in there to enhance the plot, they work brilliantly. You know, there are movies where the sex scenes are incredibly important, and there are movies where the violence is incredibly important. And I feel like this is one of those movies. I feel like those choices really enhance the situation here and the themes of, you know, equality for all and that kind of stuff. There's an anger under this, and the music just pushes it so hard. It's cool. It's aggressive. I really enjoy the music. They did an amazing job. Okay, so there's going to be, I'm going to bring up more actors and stuff, but I'm going to jump on to the next section. I don't just want to go through the whole cast, you know. Um, I want to talk about, I guess, basically the plot, the script. There are lots of things that worked in this movie and lots of things that really didn't, that were just confusing. And I kind of want to go over those things. And of course, I want to say that we can always make excuses for things. We can always say, well, maybe this is why, you know, and that's fine, of course. But that kind of makes you the writer, right? They paid a writer, and why didn't the writer put that in? Because your idea is really good. They should have put that in the movie. You know what I mean? So, all right, problems with the script. So the first thing for me, right off the bat, is what replicants are bad. Which ones? What's the deal? So what we've got is Nexus 6s and Nexus 8s. Those are the two they mention in the little opening of the film. Those are not allowed on Earth. They are the replicants that started the revolution and caused the Great Blackout and probably dropped the dirty bomb on Las Vegas. That rebellion made the creation of replicants and all replicants illegal. Period. So, if ever a Nexus 6 or a Nexus 8 is discovered on Earth, Blade Runners need to destroy it. Now, like 20 years later, another guy comes along and he creates a robot that cannot disobey at all. And it has a stamp on its right eye. Okay, if it looks up and to the right, you can see a big number. So it's very easy to tell that it's a replicant. So, knowing that these robots cannot disobey and that it's easy to tell that it's a robot, they decide, okay, fine, it's okay to start making them again. They still need Blade Runners because those old robots are still around, but these new robots are not a problem in any way. So the film opens with Kay hunting a new robot and killing it. And I do not understand why. Now, I totally get that this new robot is fully aware that an older robot had a baby, which means that it has a soul, I guess, is what the film is trying to push. And because it has a soul, that means it should be treated equally, which means that these robots that are slaves do not deserve to be slaves, and therefore there's going to be a huge rebellion. Right? I get all that from the plot, but they're not supposed to be able to disobey? Why is this robot disobeying? Why is this robot lying? And why are they part of a rebellion that wants to kill all humans? I mean, it's like 1 minute after they explain all that stuff. It doesn't make any sense. So that to me is a little bit strange. I wish they could have talked about how the system is falling apart, and it turns out that these robots can disobey under certain situations once the pressure becomes too much. Or do you know what I mean? I don't like that. It doesn't make any sense at all. This should have been a Nexus 8. Straight up. You know? It should not have been one of the newer robots. So that's a weird little problem with the script. Also, another thing is the only way you can tell that they're robots is because of the number on their right eye. So why haven't they all removed their right eye? And I do understand that if you see someone with an eye patch on their right eye, you might become suspicious, of course, right? Because that's the only way you can tell. But it's crazy that there's 3 shorts that were created as kind of hype to build up the release of the film. And one of those shorts, the robot literally takes out his right eye so that you can't tell anymore that he's a robot. So that's another weird kind of question. What's up with the right eye thing? Shouldn't most of them, and there is one in the film who does not have a right eye. And I appreciated that, but I would have liked to have, that should have been more of a thing, not just this weird, tiny, subtle thing, since it's the only way to prove that someone's a robot. I do love the opening scene, though. I gotta say, the acting's incredible. Kay's kind of like the straight man. He doesn't do much, honestly. It all comes from Bautista. Just incredible, incredible work. And Kay's just sort of baffled about what happened. You know what I mean? It's really good. It's really great. So the baseline test. I also love the baseline test. I don't think it makes sense with the way this plot is described. It's weird that Kay needs to take a baseline test because he's one of the robots that supposedly cannot disobey. So where is this weird test coming from? Do other robots take this test, or is it only Blade Runners? I don't know. There's just a lot of weirdness about it, but it is so cool. The sci-fi-ness of it, for him to sit in that small room with that weird camera thing looking at him, and that voice is like blah 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 blah, and he's just repeating this stuff over and over again, and his responses are just telling the other person whether he's on his baseline or not. And I feel like it's just a device that was probably added to the script later in order to help the audience understand that Kay is losing his mind. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about, I don't want to say whether Kay's a good guy or not, because Kay is a good guy. But Kay is a replicant. And I feel like by making him so human and so normal in the casting, I feel like it kind of hurt the overall message of this. Kay is in a bad situation. And as things get worse for him, he starts to create this fantasy of him being this really important person, He gets the idea that he was the one that was born and that he will be the leader of the revolution. And his AI the whole time is like, it's true, it's totally true. And that's kind of where I'm going to go with the AI in just a minute here. But it puts Kay in this really bad position because he kind of has a psychotic break. And he ends up leaving his job, and he's kind of going on this weird rampage and looking for Harrison Ford because he wants answers. And it gets really crazy from Kay's point of view, and I really appreciate that. But I feel like they kind of buried it. They kind of flatlined Kay going psychotic, or they didn't have the right person playing Kay to be able to make the choices to say Kay's going in the wrong direction right now. Everything's getting crazy. And I'm going to try to bring up more evidence for that as we go through this. But the baseline test, I feel like, was a part of that, even though Kay actually he doesn't change much when he's not on baseline. He's still just Kay, you know. Like we're like, okay, I guess he's not on baseline, so he lost his job. You know, I wish they would have taken that further and made it mean more. But I really love the scene. It's very sci-fi. I think if you look at 70s sci-fi films, there's going to be scenes like that where someone's being tested or they have to do some kind of computer programming thing, to prove that they're who they are or that they're okay. It's cool. It's a great scene. All right, so let's talk about the AI just a little bit. The AI for me is just your basic male fantasy, which is exactly what an AI would be, right? It's designed to make you really love it and want it and spend money on it. That's what it is, right? So I love that when he buys the little upgrade so that she can go anywhere, right? She doesn't have to stay underneath the electronic arm, that she's so excited because he spent money. He gave money to the company, right? Of course she's excited. That's what she's programmed to do. And I really appreciate. It's tough though because I don't feel like it's quite pointed out enough, the weirdness of him being in love with a product, and I don't mean just like normal. Like I love my computer, I love my camera, right? But he's like really in love with this product, and that means he can be taken advantage of, you know. I mean, it's how they track him through the whole film. Everybody knows that wherever the AI is, that's where he is. So I really appreciated that she is a big part of the problem for Kay. Even though I don't feel like the film really goes there, I can see it in there. I can see her. He's in an echo chamber. Everything he says, she's like, "You are exactly right. I always knew it. I always knew you were special." Right? Just enhancing and enhancing this weird fantasy that he's creating. And it's kind of sick and strange to watch, but it really helps him. It encourages him to be dangerous. You know what I mean? To go into this weird area that he probably shouldn't be in. So I really appreciated that. And probably the biggest evidence for it that I saw in the film is her last line. She gets killed earlier in the film, of course. They step on the thing and she's gone. But later in the film, he sees an advertisement for that product. And the advertisement focuses on him and comes down and says, "You look like a really good Joe." And throughout the film, she decides that he needs a real name. If he is truly the one and he is special, he needs a real name, and she decides to call him Joe. And in that last instance, you realize every robot that has this AI is named Joe. That's the name that's programmed for her to give robots, right? It's this really creepy, weird thing. And unfortunately, when Ryan Gosling hears that, the camera's there, right? I feel like the directing was kind of on top of it, but Ryan Gosling was always just kind of Ryan Gosling. It was just kind of depressing, you know? So I don't feel like he really took advantage of realizing, because there should be a massive shift there. That's kind of when he decides to save Harrison Ford, because his orders are to kill him. And he can't decide if he should do that. So he's just out wandering and he runs into the advertisement. That's when he decides to save him. So it's a very important moment, but because the script hasn't been supporting this weird psychotic break and becoming more violent and more aggressive, even though I feel like it's in there, I feel like the clues are there, but because it's not really pushed hard by the director and the actor, I feel like it sort of got lost. So we don't really understand what the ending means. You know, was he trying to be more human? Are they suggesting that only people with souls could save Harrison Ford? Because I think that's kind of stupid. I don't think that lines up with anything. Yeah, I don't know. It got really muddy, but I feel like the clues are in there to really have pushed this and made it a very interesting, scary character who figures out in the end what he's supposed to do, even though that's really not there. Okay, so that was a weird part. I love the AI like that. As it is, because it's so kind of muted, it just kind of turns into Pinocchio, which is really kind of boring and stupid, you know. Another key moment that I really liked from it is when they're on the rooftop, right, and she's feeling rain and she's coming to life, and it's so wonderful. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but she says, "I'm so glad I'm here with you," and he says, "You don't have to say that." And I really love that he could buck against the obvious programming that he's receiving every once in a while, that he can see it too. He's aware that he's being toyed with and taken advantage of. You know what I mean? I appreciated that. Okay, so anyway, we talked about the AI. There's one really weird tiny thing that I just want to point out. Kay is the one who discovers that Rachel is a replicant. And I don't like that. Kay's a Blade Runner. Kay kills robots. That's what he does. They've got all these scientists in the room. And they're like, "How did she die?" And he's like, "Well, it looks like she died in childbirth from what we can tell." And Kay's like, "What's that?" Zoom in. And they zoom in and they can see these marks on her bone. And he's like, "Oh, it looks like a scalpel." And then Kay's like, "Well, he was a medical robot. He must have been trying to give her a C-section." Right? And it's like, what the hell? Why is Kay in the room? You know what I mean? Why is there a Blade Runner in the room? But it's okay. That's a little weird. But then the scientists leave, and Kay goes and starts playing with the equipment. And he's like zooming in and zooming in and zooming in. And then he finds a serial number on her bone, of course. And I feel like you want your lead character to be special, of course, but giving them other people's jobs just seems very silly to me. I didn't understand that at all. Now, I do understand that part of the plot is that Kay and his boss are the only two people that really know that a replicant had a baby. So I get that, you know, but that seems kind of weak to me. That seems like an easy way out to get that plot point to be true. I don't know. I didn't like the way that was approached at all. Okay, so let's talk about the Wallace scene a little bit. So when I first saw this film, I hated that scene where he makes a robot hoping that it has a baby and it doesn't have a baby, so he cuts it up. It's just horrible and grotesque, and he's such a pretentious sack of crap. I mean, the worst. That's the worst human that I've probably seen on film in a very long time. And slowly I've begun to realize that it's important that he's that way, right? He's psychotic. He is the worst person, and I realized that the, how closely he's tied to Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, or Jeff Bezos, right? I mean, if you could sit down with them and remove all their inhibitions, no cameras around, nothing weird, and have an honest conversation with them, I think it would be that detached from reality and that insane. I feel like that is a very accurate portrayal of the billionaires in our country. Their power hungry insaneness, their psychoticness. I think it's all there. And that scene shows it. And it's disgusting and horrible. And it's true. You know what I mean? I've really slowly gained a ton of respect for that scene because of how accurate I assume that it is. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's terrible. So, yeah, that scene really, really well done, I guess. Originally, I heard a rumor that they wanted David Bowie to play the role. And it kind of lines up. I would have loved to have seen David Bowie in the film. You know, The Man Who Fell to Earth is an excellent film. We'll probably do a deep dive into that sometime. But David Bowie's great. I would have loved to have seen that. Of course, he passed away in 2016, and this film came out in 2017. So I feel like when they were kind of courting him and talking to him, he was probably really sick. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. But that would have been amazing. I would have really enjoyed that. Although it would have been the same disgusting scene. So I don't know. It would have been really awkward and weird because I like David Bowie, you know. And I feel like the actor who played him did a fine job. He was a pretentious piece of crap, which is exactly what he needed to be. So, good job, actor. You know, that was really good. There is a cool thing that I sort of liked, which is Kay can instantly tell who's a replicant, and I appreciated that. I like, or even all the replicants kind of could. There's a fun little part when Kay first meets Love, and he says he named you. You must be special. And then she turns around and quips back at him something about the fact that he's also a replicant and she can tell. And I really appreciated that little bit of banter in there because I like that the replicants are kind of kids. I just love it. I love that they're so emotional and scared and happy and funny and mean, and I mean they're just crazy weird little robots, and I really love that. They're so bizarre. So that scene was kind of cool. I liked that. All right, so now we're going to get into some stupid number stuff, but it's kind of important for understanding how this thing works because it's kind of a mess. So the original Blade Runner took place in 2019. Rachel died in 2021, 2 years later, and the robot child was born in 2021. Then we got the blackout in 2022. So the robot rebellion, the Nexus 6s and the Nexus 8s. I don't know what's up with Nexus 7s. I'm not sure why that wasn't listed in there. But it's cool. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't know what's going on there. But the 6s and the 8s got all crazy, started a huge rebellion, caused a massive blackout. This is after Rachel's died. Caused a massive blackout, erase all the old information, and drop a dirty bomb on Las Vegas. All that stuff happens. Then, like 20 years later, Wallace takes over the Tyrell Corporation because it went bankrupt, and he is allowed to start making robots again because they do not disobey. So we get the Baptista character at the beginning of the film who's like who I guess was made like 20 years after Rachel died, but he witnessed a miracle, which I don't understand. Like, I feel like that's a direct contradiction. Like, straight up, he should have been a Nexus. I do not understand why he had a number on his eye. I don't get that at all. Um, and they could have gone into something like, if you are a Nexus 8, but you prove that you're okay, we'll let you on Earth, but we have to put a number on your eye. I'm making all that up, right? And we shouldn't need to be making stuff up. And even that, I wouldn't really appreciate. Like, that doesn't sound right at all. But none of that stuff lines up. The timing of why did they make him a new robot? Like, that's the real question. What is the deal with that? Why isn't he a Nexus 8? I don't get it. And I guess it's because they didn't want to deal with a void comp test. Right? They wanted it to be easy to tell that he was a robot, I guess. I don't know. It's not a good choice. Okay, so love stealing the bones. This is the craziest scene because the violence is so crazy. She's like taking the bones and the guy walks in and I love that the guy's not like, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know, he's like, "Hi, you really can't take those." I just love that kind of approach to it. And she's like, "Oh, no, I know. I got a paper." And she hands him the paper and then she walks around behind him and just destroys his spinal cord. Like, breaks his neck. Bam! And that's it. Like, and it's shocking. And they film it from above, right? They do the Alfred Hitchcock God cam thing right from above. Bam! Right in the back of the neck. And he just collapses because he's completely paralyzed, of course. He can't even breathe. Right? And she comes back around and starts grabbing bones. But then they come down to him. And they did such a brilliant job of setting up this shot because they've got both of his eyes are swollen with blood as if he'd been in some kind of a. I mean, obviously, he got hit in the back like he'd been in a car accident. That's how hard she hit him, right? The blood just pools in his eyes. He's got blood coming out of the ducts. They pull his collar up so that he's kind of like this, you know? I mean, it looks terrifying. And he can't breathe, right? There's blood shooting out of his mouth. It is insanely grotesque. And it's so fast. And she doesn't care at all. Like, she has one job that she is there to do. And as a robot, she doesn't care about these humans at all. Of course, she cares about the person who made her. She wants to impress him. And I really appreciate, and I wish they could have gone a little bit further with this. There's a very abusive relationship between Wallace and Love. Him kind of goading her. You want to be the best, right? You really are the best, right, Love? Like, kind of questioning it and pushing her all the time. And I really appreciated that. It kind of reminded me of the second of the new Star Wars films. I really appreciated that second film. I enjoyed that. We might have to do a deep dive on it. I know, of course, that it didn't do well. It has its issues. But I really liked the abusive nature of the person controlling the bad guy. And the way that kind of played out, that he became violent like him, because it kind of goes in cycles like that. I appreciated the relationship that was there. And I kind of felt that in this as well. I think that's a very cool and important thing for films to kind of explore, that cycle of abuse. So that was cool. That scene, I was so shocked. And I'm so glad that it was there, right? I feel like it has to be in the film because we have to know how much anger a person can have when they're not treated well, when they're abused or when they're ignored or being a slave, of course, right? Obviously. Like, it makes you it makes you a different person, you know, and I appreciate seeing it come out of them because they're being mistreated. You know, what do you expect? That's what you're asking for when you treat someone like that. So, great scene. Okay, the DNA scene. So, there's another scene where Kay is trying to find the child. Now, this makes no sense because, of course, the child was born before the blackout and all information was lost. And the child was not born in a hospital. The mother died in childbirth. I'm going to guess either in Las Vegas or in or at that farm, right? There is no way that child got tracked. It makes no sense. Eventually, they end up giving the child to an orphanage in order to protect it. And his records are really shoddy. You know, it's not like he's running a DNA test on all the kids. And you could say, well, maybe that is where they got the DNA, right? But the problem that I have with it is there's two DNAs that are exactly the same, a male and a female. Now, of course, this makes him think, ooh, the male is me, I'm the one. And his little AI is like, you are the one, you're doing so good. And they assume that the girl's made up. Now, of course, in the film, it's the opposite. The boy's made up and the girl's not. But I do wonder, why make two? Why make one at all? And if you are going to make two, why make the DNA exactly the same? Because any computer in the universe could go, hey, these two humans are exactly the same, right? I mean, there's no, I don't know. All that is so bizarre. And it's really freaky, too, that he brings his AI to work with him and he turns it on. And I'm aware that the reason that she's there is so they can do an exposition dump so that he can explain to her what's happening. I think that's just another kind of easy way out to get some exposition out, which, again, is a little bit awkward and strange. And it's too bad that they weren't a little more clever about how to get the info out and why the child has a record of any kind. And I know they need to find the kid, but honestly, the key to finding the kid is Harrison Ford. Why are you looking on some stupid computer? You know, Harrison Ford's the key. He's in the movie. You find him. You know, it's not hard. But anyway, I appreciate and I don't think this is on purpose. This is a weird thing. When he goes to the orphanage, they have a very two-dimensional character who runs the orphanage. He's a real evil person who takes advantage of children, right? It's like Oliver or Annie or whatever, you know. It's just a trope, I guess, right? The evil orphanage runner, even in Skyrim, right? The evil orphanage runner. But the actor really pushed to try to give this guy more depth. He decided that in the past he was a teacher, and I'm getting all this from the documentary, and I'll get to why I'm bringing it up real soon. Sorry. The character is a lot more than a two-dimensional evil person, but they don't alter Kay's response to him. So Kay, just brutalizes this guy in order to get the information that he needs. But the actor who's playing the head of the orphanage makes it so sympathetic and real that we really kind of feel bad for him. And that's okay because I feel like it plays into Kay going into this psychotic break and becoming a very evil character who's going to do bad things unless he finds his humanity, kind of thing, right? Which I feel like is kind of what we're watching. You know what I mean? I feel like that's kind of supported in the script, as I was talking about earlier with the AI and all that. So I like the scene, but I don't think it was on purpose. I think it came out on accident. And I feel like in an from another angle, I feel like it kind of hurts the point because of course the actor they got to play that character is black. So you've got this white cop beating up on this black guy who's just trying to make a living, and it gets really weird. You know what I mean? It's a strange scene, and I'm not positive if it's a clue that the film was going in the direction that I think it should have been going in, but it sort of got too bogged down, or if it was just an accident and it just looks like it's going the direction that I wanted it to go in. I'm not sure. I don't know, but it's a weird scene. It's a very strange scene, and I'm not sure why they didn't either push it harder and have Kay going down the wrong path, or bring it down a little bit, Kay, because this other actor is not behaving the way the scriptwriter expected them to behave, you know, which can happen. And then you might need some rewrites because the person they cast is more than the character you created. Or the director just needs to sit down with the actor and say, you can't do all that stuff. You're ruining the movie. You know what I mean? You need to pull it back and just be two dimensional. I'm sorry. You need to be two dimensional. You know, which would be a rough conversation. I wouldn't want that to happen to me or anybody else. So, of course, you've got the love scene in this, which I think is totally justified. I don't feel like it's a problem. I do feel there's a couple tiny things that I feel weird about it. Number one, the only reason the prostitute, I shouldn't say the only reason, the main reason the prostitute takes that job is because the rebellion has ordered her to find out what he knows about the child. So, she meets him initially, he turns her down, she completely gives up. That's weird, right? She has a job to do, she's not doing it, that's weird. Then, the AI hires her, which makes me wonder, did the AI spend his money? Because that's weird, right? That shouldn't be happening. So the AI hires her, and she's like, oh, good. Now I can do my job. So she goes there. She plants a bug on him. But the freaky thing about it is they have sex, and she passes out on the bed. He goes and takes a shower. She wakes up and realizes, ooh, now's a good time. And she gets up and she pulls the bug out of her mouth, which I think is really bizarre. Like, does she have a container in there? Or has she just had it in her mouth the whole time? Like, that's really weird. She pulls the bug out of her mouth. She puts it in his coat pocket. Not the best place, but it's okay, right? I get it. She puts it in the coat pocket. And then the AI is right behind her. And she's like, you can go now. I'm done with you. Right? Because she's jealous or whatever. I don't know. So she leaves, but the AI doesn't notice that she did something weird. And that's a little weird to me too. Like these little tiny things, they're just weird. They just kind of stick with you and make you wonder what the heck's going on. You know, what is this world? Where are we? So I thought that was interesting. Needed to be pointed out. All right, so the horse. He has a memory. He goes and finds the horse. The horse was a gift for Harrison Ford's child, which makes him think it's him. I don't know why he has that memory. That's really weird, but he does. So, okay, fine. I guess they're giving out those memories. And then he goes to Harrison Ford's daughter, shows her the memory. She breaks down because it's actually her memory, but doesn't bother to tell the police who are there on an investigation. That's my memory. She doesn't bother to mention that. She just kind of spazzes out and says, yes, it's real. And then they leave, right? Which is okay. It's just a tiny bit weird. But then he goes to have the horse analyzed to find out where it came from. And this scene is really bizarre because when he analyzes it, he says, oh, this is clearly from Las Vegas because of all the radiation, right? Las Vegas got a dirty bomb dropped on it. If you go there, you die. That's Las Vegas. Okay? So, okay, this was made in Las Vegas. So clearly, whoever made this is dead because all the radiation that's in the wood, and this person was literally carving it. Now, it is possible that the wood was collected in Las Vegas by a robot and then shipped out, and people could buy it and carve little animals out of it. But I'm making all that crap up, right? That's not good, you know. First off, it's not a good idea, and secondly, it's not in the film, so, you know. But, okay, so it came from Las Vegas. And one really neat thing, well, I don't know if this is neat or not. It's weird. He then goes on to say, dude, you're a millionaire. You have wood, right? But earlier in the film, there's an entire tree at this farm. Like, if that horse is worth $1 million, how much is the dead tree worth? That's insanity, right? That's billions of dollars right there. So that didn't make any sense to me. But a clever thing, he's like, I'll trade you something. I can get you a horse for this, or a goat. I could get you a goat. And I really love that he brought up a goat because, of course, in Philip K. Dick's novel, they get a goat, right? And Rachel checks it off the roof. So I thought that was a fun callback to have it be a goat that he offers. Apparently, Harrison Ford has been living in Las Vegas. And apparently, the radiation in Las Vegas is nominal. That's what the little robot says. Radiation nominal. So that leads me to one of two questions. Like, how long has it been that way? How long has Harrison Ford been living there? I think a very long time. You know, they dropped the kid off at the orphanage. And I think Rachel and Harrison Ford went... Oh, no, Rachel was dead. So he dropped the kid off at the orphanage to protect the kid, which is horrible. But, okay. And he, I guess, went straight to Las Vegas. So I'm thinking to myself, how did he survive? So how did Harrison Ford survive in Las Vegas if he went straight there? Right? The radiation would have killed him long ago. So he must have waited a long time to go to Las Vegas until it was kind of safe, which would then suggest that the wood wouldn't have radiation in it because the radiation levels are nominal, I guess. Also, why is he the only one in Las Vegas? Like, there's hordes of people living in junkyards, and I mean, he's got whiskey, he's got power, he's got water. I'm very confused about why Las Vegas, if it's habitable and there's a person living there, why aren't there 1,000 people living there? You know, scavengers, and if your car's going to get shot down, it's going to be going over Las Vegas, I assume. Although maybe not. Maybe everybody there would be so happy because it's not too crowded and they have everything they need. I don't know. That was just bizarre. And they've got Harrison Ford getting honey from bees, which I guess does kind of bring up the question, what's he eating? You know, and maybe he gets worms. Maybe somebody ships worms to him. I don't know. But if he's getting worms shipped to Las Vegas, like, I don't know. That all of Las Vegas is really weird. So he meets Harrison Ford. He gets to Las Vegas, and Dana, she's done a couple videos on the channel, and she'll do more, of course. But when we're watching the film, it was pretty cool. Dana's a screenwriter. She's been published. She's really good. Harrison Ford and Kay have a small conversation. And he's like, I used to be a Blade Runner like you. I was really good. And Kay's like, well, it's more complicated now. Right? Like, I think they're trying to do the film noir junk, I guess, is what's happening. The dialogue's not great. And they start fighting. And they get into this big tussle and they end up down. And then the fight ends by Harrison Ford saying, "Do you want a drink or do you want to keep fighting?" And he says, "I want a drink." And at that moment, Dana leaned over to me and said, "That should have been the first line of dialogue that they had." And I think that's brilliant. All that nonsense that they were saying should not have happened. He should have tinkered around the piano, and Harrison Ford should have came charging out of that hallway, shooting at him. He should have gone over the balcony. They should have had a huge fight, and then finally, the first words Harrison speaks should have been, "Do you want a drink or do you want to keep fighting?" Would have been brilliant. Kind of the less is more idea, you know. That I think that was really a brilliant suggestion. um, so all of that happens, and then they have this kind of awkward scene where they're at the bar, and I feel like this also kind of goes with my idea that Kay is sort of going off the rails, that he's pushing too hard. Um, he's asking him really direct, point blank questions like, um, "Where's the child?" or I can't remember exactly what it is, but really direct stuff. And he's really being aggressive with Harrison Ford. Although there is one tiny moment I want to point out. Harrison Ford has a dog, and Kay asks, "Is that real?" And he says, "I don't know." And I really love that response because it means that he didn't even bother to check, right? He doesn't care. And of course, this is the guy who got a robot pregnant, right? He truly does not care about how real it is. And of course, he does go on in typical Harrison Ford fashion and says, "Why don't you ask him?" Right? Which is kind of silly and funny. But I feel like it maybe even kind of hurt it a little bit because that response, I don't know, is so good. It's so important and for his character. I really appreciated that. So that's cool. Maybe less is more there as well. But Kay gets really aggressive with him and needs answers. And then at the end, Harrison Ford says, "It's safer to just be strangers." And he leaves, right? Because Kay's pushed him so hard. And then he has this weird moment where he says, "To strangers," right? And drinks his drink, which I think, once again, is just part of the film noir crap that we're having to kind of sit through in these conversations. But I do feel like that might be another clue of Kay not being Kay. I mean, that's not like him, you know? The scene didn't make a lot of sense, but I feel like it would have made more sense if we were fully aware that Kay was losing his mind, you know? If they kept going in that direction to the point where he finds the ad and she says, "You look like a really good Joe," and that would bring him back, you know. So it kind of works, but it doesn't work because they're not really doing it, you know. It's weird. That was a very odd scene for me that didn't really work real well. So we get to the Rachel Deckard scene. They actually have a scene together in the film, of course, but they I think they use a computer to create Rachel, so it looks not great. I mean, for our current technology and for the amount of money they spent, I think it looks really good, but that doesn't mean it looks good. You know what I mean? They did a fine job with the tools that they have, but it looks weird. And I feel like that really hurt the scene. I wish they had another bargaining chip, but it's a good choice, right? Of course he's going to remake Rachel to offer to Harrison Ford to get information about the rebellion. Of course he is. So I don't know. I wish it would have played out a little bit differently. I like the choices that were made. Let's pretend they could have made a perfect Rachel. That computer wise, we all just would have been, oh my God, it's her. You know what I mean? Let's pretend they could do that. She would come on. He would. He says you got the eye color wrong. I don't like that choice, first off, because the first thing we see about Rachel in this film is her giant eyeball because of the void comp test, right? She puts that little ball in, we see her eyeball, and then we hear the dialogue. Is this testing whether I'm a lesbian or a replicant? You know, that little section. Um, but that's what we see. The one thing they definitely know about Rachel is what her eyeball looks like. So to mess that up is so dumb. But I also think it's really hard on Harrison Ford because he needs to play, and he does a good job of this, but he needs to play that he's not going to go for the ultimate temptation because he wants to protect his child. And the way he conveys that is by dissing on the quality, which is a little bit hard. You know what I mean? He doesn't just get to say no, which would have been so much easier as an actor, right? To convey all of that, to struggle with wanting to accept it, but deciding not to, and just saying no. He has to have typical Harrison Ford trickster kind of, you screwed it up. You know what I mean? Um, so I, I feel like that didn't totally work either. And of course, they shoot her, you know, right in front of him. Um, and that is even a little bit weird, right? Because what would have happened if he said, just think about it? Or what would have happened if they grabbed her and said that they were going to torture her? Or, you know what I mean? There's a lot of, and granted, he does go on to say, we're going to take you off world and we're going to torture you there. I'm not sure why they have to go off world, except for, of course, it makes it easy for the plot because then he can get captured. But, yeah, the scene just didn't quite work for me. I feel like they could have made some different, bolder, more interesting choices. Bringing Rachel back is a pretty big choice. That's okay, but I feel like they didn't quite have the technology and the choices around it weren't as bold as they could have been. You know, I also the fact that she was dressed exactly, it's literally her first scene in Blade Runner. She puts her arm up, you know what I mean, as she's walking up the steps, although she's just, you know, I don't know. I don't know. That was an odd choice. Like I feel like they could have made her a little more relaxed, right? Rather than the very first instant that he saw her and thought, who are you? I'm supposed to be having a meeting with this guy. What are you doing here? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So we just got a couple more quick things. First off, how does Deckard know where Harrison Ford? How does Kay know where Deckard is to save him? How does he know? Because you get this weird stuff from Kay. Like Kay is unconscious and he wakes up and they're at a bonfire and there's like all these people sitting around and he's watching the sparks fly up and they're outside and that's really weird. And then he goes unconscious again. And then when he wakes up later, they're in some kind of weird bunker and there's all these replicants there and they're like, we're the rebellion and you're going to join us, right? And all this weirdness going on. Nobody knows how much time has passed and where the heck he is. You know, has he left the country? I don't know. Where are they? It's really bizarre. And then we get Deckard's side of what happened. They grab him, they throw him in a car, they take him to Tyrell, and they take him to Wallace, not Tyrell. And he gets questioned. He tells them to piss off. so they take him off world. Like, those two stories are so different, and one seems to take a really long time, and the other one seems to be really quick. So I'm not sure how he knows where Deckard is. Maybe the rebellion knows. Maybe they were tracking them, and once again, kind of making excuses for the movie. I wish we just sort of knew how he knew where Deckard was, but he knows. So he flies in, he blows up the guard cars. I don't know why they have guard cars if they're just going to get blown up like nothing, you know what I mean? But he blows up the guard cars, and he knows not to blow up Harrison Ford's car. I'm not sure how he knows which car he's in, but he blows up two of the cars. The third car crashes. He lands, and then he's got to fight Love, which is just incredible. She is so amazing in that scene. Her her weird explosive energy is just so great. It's a really well choreographed scene. The actors handle it well, and she's just amazing. It's crazy. Even the stills from it of her, she's just exuding this energy of I want to be the best. Really excellent work from her. So there's a big fight scene, and then he gets Harrison and he saves him. There's a weird moment where Harrison can't find Kay, and he's like, Joe, Joe, and then Joe appears on screen like 3 feet from him. I don't know, bizarreness, and then they're saved, right? And Harrison says, "You should have let me die." And Kay says, "I did. You drowned in the car. Now the whole world thinks you're dead, and no one will ever bother you again." Which doesn't make any sense at all. First off, there's only 2 or 3 people that even know he was in the car, right? I mean, I guess he can tell the rebellion. Well, he dies. So I think he dies. I don't know. The ending's confusing too. But that doesn't make any sense because you know that Wallace is going to have robots walking on the bottom of the ocean, gathering up all the remains from the vehicles and the dead people, and realizing Harrison's not there, right? There's no way he's going to convince Wallace that Harrison Ford is dead after rescuing him. That doesn't make any sense at all. So then they go to meet his daughter. So he drops off Harrison Ford at the clinic and says, "Your daughter's right in there." Harrison Ford goes inside, and I think he dies on the steps. So I don't know. Is Harrison Ford going to try to bust her out of there? But she can't leave because she'll get sick. So maybe he's just going to say hi and then go back to Vegas? I don't know. I do not know. He can't go back to Vegas because Wallace is going to go there. You know that. I I have no idea what's supposed to happen next. And I don't know if they were purposely trying to leave it open so they could do a sequel, which of course is right out, I'm sure, because it just didn't do that well. A lot of the things we talked about. But I feel that if they would have worked with Kay a little bit more or got somebody else to play Kay, I don't want to be like, this guy can't act, it was terrible, because that's wrong. It's just wrong. I just feel like people weren't all on the same page. Somehow the plot of this thing was getting buried, you know? And that's way too bad, because if they would have pushed that K character more and we could have seen a clean arc from him, of him going this way and then realizing that's not who I am and coming back, if we could have seen that, I feel like this movie would have been massively successful. But as it is, it's just kind of confusing. And that is the reason that I give this an 8. Because I feel like that movie is in there. It just didn't come through cleanly. And that movie, I think, is amazing. I think that movie could have been a 9 or a 10. So I'm giving this an 8, even though it probably plays more like a 6 or a 7, you know. But I'm giving it an 8 because I can see what it could have been, I think. All right, that was a lot. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this. If you do, we've got a lot more. So please like this and make sure to subscribe so you can go see the other stuff and be notified when we get new stuff coming through. And have a great day.